If you walk into a restaurant today, you open the menu and you see a plate of oxtail, it's going to run you $35, $40. Usually, when you pay for a cut of beef like that, you're expecting a premium cut, a ribeye, a filet. But this is literally just a cow's tail. A century ago, it was considered garbage. The white establishment would not touch it. So how did this pile of trash become a $40 luxury item? Well, today, this isn't a story about a family recipe. It's a story about how Black cooks engineered an economic flip, how they sold these systems' own trash right back to a world for $1 billion profit. So join us today while we discuss why Black folks love oxtails. And if you enjoy stories like this, you can find more stories like this at onemichistory.com. Please like and subscribe. But without further ado, let's get started. To understand oxtails, you have to understand the disrespect. If you go back to the 1800s, the plantation economy was running at full speed. In the American South, it was cotton. In Jamaica, it was the brutal product of sugar. When cows or steers were slaughtered, the colonial establishment took the high cuts, the hams, the roasts, the steaks, the premium ribs. They took the meat that was easy to cook and easy to chew. What was left over wasn't even considered food by white folks' terms. It was biological waste. It was the intestines. It was the feet, the ears, the tail. It was the meat that was specifically designed to make you feel like you were at the bottom of the economic ladder. The system tossed away these scraps into a pile and gave them to enslaved Black folks from Mississippi to Kingston. Now, this is the exact moment where most places would talk about the struggle. The textbooks would give you a whitewashed story that tells you how sad and hungry all of us were. They want you to view enslaved cooks like they were helpless victims, tossing whatever random garbage they could find into a pot to make a desperate, watery soup. But Black cooks didn't have time for pity. They were too busy engineering a masterpiece. They looked at that pile of discarded bones and oxtails, and they saw what white plantation owners couldn't see. When the white owners looked at oxtails, all they saw was tough, bony, unchewable pieces of garbage. But when Black cooks looked at it, they saw collagen, they saw marrow, they saw the building blocks of concentrated flavor. They realized that the system's arrogance was actually a massive vulnerability. The system thought that it was hoarding all the good meat, but they were completely unaware that they were throwing away the most flavorful parts of the animal. See, Black cooks understood something that many people at the time didn't, that most cooks were lazy and impatient. A steak was easy. You throw a ribeye on a hot fire for 5 minutes on each side and it's done. Anyone can do that. It requires zero culinary intelligence. But oxtail, it requires time and strategy. Think about the anatomy of an oxtail. The cow spends its entire life using its tail to swat flies. It's a constantly moving appendage. That means that the muscle fibers in the oxtail are thick like steel cables. It's a heavily exercised muscle, packed tight with thick connective tissue, cartilage, and massive bones. If you try to cook an oxtail like a steak and just throw it on the grill, it will literally break your teeth. It's like chewing a leather boot. So Black cooks across the diaspora hacked the system by turning the cast iron pot into a chemistry lab. They didn't just cook the meat, they broke it down on a cellular level using two parallel methods. In the American South, they utilized the ancestral knowledge of Western Africa one-pot cooking. They seared the meat and submerged it in seasoned liquid and let the low and slow method melt the connective tissue into velvet gelatin, creating a rich, thick gravy. But down in Jamaica, these cooks took it a step further. They looked at the sugar that they were harvesting and weaponized it. They took cane sugar, burned it down to the bottom in heavy Dutch pot until it was smoking and caramelized. Using this legendary browning technique, they tossed in the oxtails and locked in that deep, dark mahogany crust and that flavor profile that is impossible to replicate with just salt and pepper. Then they used the island's arsenal, Scotch bonnet peppers for that aggressive heat, allspice, fresh thyme, and scallions. They let it simmer for hours until the thick cartilage melted away. Then they stretched the meat by adding butter beans to soak up the liquid that was left behind. This wasn't just survival, it was two parallel scientific methods for processing oxtail. They engineered scraps into a masterpiece. They created a closed-loop flavor profile where nothing was wasted. Yet, if this technique just stayed on plantations, it would have been a footnote. But Black folks were about to move. When emancipation came, the Great Migration kicked off some years later. Millions of Black Americans headed north and west to cities like Chicago, Detroit, and Harlem, and Oakland. And at the same time, the Caribbeans were boarding ships to London and Toronto, Miami, Brooklyn. They packed their suitcases and brought along their culinary blueprints. By the mid-20th century, oxtail moved from rural dirt roads into the concrete urban centers of the world. Black women opened restaurants, boarding houses, and alley cook shops that fed the massive Black working-class population coming off 12-hour shifts. To make a profit, these business women needed a cheap protein, and oxtails, they were dirt cheap. Why? Because white packing plant executives in Chicago and British butchers in London still thought the oxtail was trash. Black entrepreneurs bought the tails for pennies. They cooked them using methods that had been perfected by their ancestors, and they sold them by the thousands. This wasn't just a dinner service, it was an economic engine. Black families bought homes, funded churches, sent their kids to college off the profits from this trash meat. Black cooks were beating white butchers by exploiting their own ignorance. Now you know, the establishment was never going to allow us to keep this secret forever. Fast forward to the late 20th century, early 21st century, and the Food Network era kicks in. High-end white chefs start looking for an authentic, poor people ingredients to put on their menus. And they realized that they had been ignoring a gold mine. White chefs and corporate restaurants suddenly discovered oxtails. They realized that the meat that we've been eating for a century was perfect for their high-end stews and Italian ragouts. They slapped it on menus and called it nose-to-tail dining, acting like they had invented the concept of not wasting the animal. This was the gentrification of poor people food. Once the establishment wanted it, the global demand skyrocketed. But there's a bit of a mathematical problem with oxtail. A 1,200-pound steer only has one tail. The tail only yields about 1.5 pounds of viable, usable meat. When Black and brown people wanted it, the supply was fine. When the entire world wanted it, it was a rare commodity. The price of oxtails went from 99 cents a pound in the 90s to $5, then $8, then $10, then $14 a pound at the grocery store. The system couldn't beat the recipe, so they priced us out of our own invention. In the end, we taught that Black history is about us constantly begging. We're told that our ancestors spent all of their time asking the system for a seat at their table. But oxtail, it flips that narrative. We didn't ask for a piece of their pie. We took the garbage that they were throwing away and turned it into an undeniable legacy and made it so good that the system literally had to buy it back from us. The true power in all of this is not begging for a seat at their table. It is engineering your own, developing your own recipes and your own table. Plantation owners thought they were humiliating us by giving us their scraps. They didn't realize they were handing us the keys to a $1 billion empire that spanned from Atlanta to Kingston, from London to Brooklyn. So next time you see a plate of $14 oxtails, you don't see an expensive meal. You see the economic flip that was developed by Black folks. The system can never defeat you if you know how to extract value from the places that they are always too arrogant to look. Thank you. This has been One My Black History. I'm your host, Country Boy, and this is the story of why Black folks love oxtails. Yeah, man, that's nice. It's nice to get back and do food again. I kind of missed it. This was a lot of fun. I have been trying to do more where we push outside the boundaries of American Black folks. I was reading Malcolm X. You can check out my live about it. And he talked about how Black Americans like to think of themselves inside a vacuum, and that the whole world is dealing with the similar struggle, and that you're not in a bubble, and we all dealt with the same things. And you need to look outside of that. Why are you begging for, um, civil rights from the State Department? Why are you not asking or looking for funding from African nations, from Black nations, which is extremely true? Anyway, in my estimation, that means that I need to start looking more towards diaspora. So yeah, this is me trying to bridge outside of that a little bit. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank all my day ones. I love all of you guys, all my financial contributors. You guys are amazing. You allow me to keep this thing moving, to keep this thing going. Please subscribe to my Substack. I am putting out articles every single week and doing notes most days. Right now, we're doing Women's History Month. Well, I'm doing Black women every single day. So join me on Substack. Join me here. So please subscribe. I love you all. Thank you for your support. Peace.